Hey, 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 Fit Mama. Jen Oliver here, your host of the Fit Mama podcast. This is the work in to your workout.
Hey, Fit Mama, welcome to today's episode where I am interviewing none other than Dr. Meghan Walker. Dr. Meghan Walker is a naturopathic doctor who actually sold her practice of well over a decade about a month before the COVID-19 lockdown went global. In addition to being a naturopathic doctor, Meghan Walker is an anthropologist focusing on the health optimization of entrepreneurs and game changers. I've actually known Meghan since high school when we were teammates on the same basketball team for a coach we loved and called Sparkles. I was a year younger than her, but a decade behind as an entrepreneur, as Meghan started her first biz at age 17, which I actually worked for, and she sold her first business while in university 6 years later. Meghan is a co-founder and past CEO of the digital media startup Bright Almond, which is how we sort of reconnected online in the business space, even though we had been friends for that 20 plus years. But when she entered the online space, I watched, as she's always been a mentor to me. Tune in and you'll know why within a few seconds. Meghan is the host of the Anthropology podcast. She's the founder of Anthropology Labs, the brilliant creator of the women's performance supplement line Badass Fuel, which I use, the greens, the omegas, and the multis. Yes, please. High quality supplements designed for women. And in addition to that, Meg is the chief cheerleader at Clinician Business Labs, and once again, my boss, as I have been coaching these incredible entrepreneurs alongside Meghan on her platform to assist clinicians in scaling and amplifying their businesses. Meghan is so articulate, and it's no surprise that she's an award-winning speaker, having spoken on international stages and through multiple media outlets on topics related to women's performance medicine, brain health, and entrepreneurship. Meghan is the host and producer of the annual entrepreneurship conference, Impact Lives, which is amazing. And most importantly, her role as the bedtime story reader to her 3 young girls. I also happen to personally know that these 3 girls are budding entrepreneurs themselves, and her husband is the sweetest, coolest, most amazing man and dad. Here she is, the woman I admire so much, Dr. Meghan Walker. Hey, and welcome to the podcast, Dr. Meghan Walker.
I'm so excited to be here.
Oh my gosh, hearing your voice just excites me. This is such a treat for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jen.
Oh, you're the best. So, I've been wanting to introduce you to the Fit Mamas for quite some time. And, Meghan, you have been doing so many amazing things for as long as I've known you, which is over 20 years now. So I can say that with confidence.
Since we were toddlers.
Oh, yeah, really. Exactly. Exactly. Back in daycare days. So, Meghan, I really just want to jump this whole podcast off with asking, what motivates you to do all the things that you do?
That's a great question. And I wish I was like, oh, it's totally this. I was thinking, just be honest, I was thinking about this last night. I was like, what is that inner motivation? And what I'm realizing, and especially right now while we're home and people are on lockdown and everyone's stepping up and serving in different ways, I think service is my love language. I get excited about stepping up and seeing how I can help solve other people's problems. And for a long time, I was like, oh, it's a problem. I'm a fixer. I gotta let people move through the things. I'm like, no, I'm a fixer. So, and an entrepreneur. So I love to solve problems, and I love to help people. And I think that's always been, sort of been at the core of what motivates me to take action.
Yeah. I didn't even know about entrepreneurism. And funny enough, I look back at high school and I go, I wish someone had told me about being an entrepreneur. How did I miss that class or that memo, And funny enough, I was in high school with you in your last year. You were 1 year ahead of me. And I actually ended up working for you at the business that you started at a young age. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, yeah. So I recognized really early that I was not a good employee, but I didn't have the language to describe that. I just would be really frustrated. And even when I would go to work, I'd be like, oh, and I did all these extra things and all this stuff. And sometimes that wouldn't even settle well with them. Like, it created all of this friction. I was just like, what is going on? Like, I'm not cut out for this thing. Like, how am I going to get through the rest of my life? I was working at a marina one summer, and halfway through the summer, I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I had this opportunity to start cleaning cottages, and I worked for somebody else, but I had autonomy. And then the next year I bought her business and then grew her business. And I was like, wait a second, people who live on islands, I bet they want their cottages cleaned too. And I had this little tin boat, and I was like, I'm just going to start to see if that's actually true. And it was true. And so built this like little niche cottage cleaning business all summer long, in particular serving clientele on islands, and then was able to grow that and had 11, 15 different summer workers working with me, opening cottages, cleaning cottages, doing their thing. And I was like, okay, this is what I like to do. I like serving clients. I like being innovative. I don't want to have to answer to anybody. And it gave me this like little hint of financial freedom at a really young age. And I was like, oh, can't go back now.
No, definitely not. Wow.
No, you can't go back.
No, you can't. And you know what? The thing is that I mean, how old were you then? Would you say 17?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I was about 17. And then I sold that business just before I started grad school because someone else was like, oh, I could do this too. And I was like, sure can. And my season has ended on this.
Wow. How cool to have that experience and build businesses and do those things at such a young age and experience that. And I love the way you thought outside the box. Like, it took me good until I was 25 working at a job that I was like, I'm not meant to work for someone in this capacity, right? Like, and you figured that out almost a decade sooner. So how great. I know your dad was a big influence in your life as he's into business. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when I was growing up, my parents were divorced and had joint custody. So I lived with my mom, I lived with my dad, and I was an only child from their marriage. And so when I was with my dad, he spoke at a really early age to me around this idea that as a person, you're not going to learn about money and business in school. Even if you choose to major in business, it doesn't mean that you're majoring in entrepreneurship, and that wasn't really a thing that you could do then. And he said, and as a woman, you are not necessarily going to get exposed to financial management. So at a really young age, he had this thing that he did with me where he said, your allowance is tied to your acquisition of business acumen, really. And so he'd give me a book, and then if I read it and I could talk to it, the concepts in my own version, my allowance would increase accordingly. I had to work for my allowance. I didn't just get to read books.
Wow.
And this kept going. And at some points at university, he'd send me a book. He'd be like, read it. And I'd read it. And then he'd be like, great, come in. I'm going to take you out to dinner. So we always had this idea. I had stocks that I had to follow. We talked about business. When we would I'd throw down business ideas at dinner. It was just part of the culture of our family. 9 times out of 10, he'd be like, those are terrible ideas, and this is why. Wow. So it was like a little Dragon's Den or Shark Tank every single night at the dinner table. And not in a way that was was it damaging to my self-esteem. It was a really constructive conversation, but it helped mold my thinking with respect to this idea and this passion I had around solving problems, but actually putting problems out in the world that people would be interested in purchasing. And I hear this all the time when I'm mentoring people. They're like, oh, I totally want to start a business doing this. I'm really good at cooking, or I'm really good at making recipes. And I was like, that's amazing. I just don't know if we have a market for selling recipes, right? A recipe book in and of itself isn't a business. Right. So that's always just been, it's been a way I was conditioned to think at a really young age. And I definitely now, while we're in the flow of things, I can see how it serves me.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I had goosebumps at one point when you were talking, and I'm like, I want to do this with the girls,
Yeah,
and
it's so powerful.
Yeah. And there's so many great things that you're right. Like, if someone doesn't go out of their way and tell you, you're not going to learn this in school, this is something we have to take time and do on the side, you don't know. I really went through so long not knowing, and now having that. And I mean, I've listened to you talk about that, and it's just so inspiring. And it's like, wow, we really have a lot of opportunity to influence our own children, right?
Huge.
Yeah. Wow. Now I'd love to dive into that because you are over there raising 3 daughters. I got 2 of my own over here. So we got 5 little ladies that we're raising. Holy bananas, right?
No words. I look around some days, I'm like, I'm not old enough or mature enough to have children. Like, how did this happen?
I know. Should I be responsible for these people or what's happening
gosh.
right now? I know. It's crazy. And I mean, I've seen you with your daughters. These 3 are, they're just such loves. They're so brilliant. And I can see how they already think in the Meghan way. It's so cool. And, I'd love to know, what do you focus on with them in terms of their growth that is outside of what they would learn in school? Like, do you have, is it conscious that you kind of think of things like that?
Yeah, and I feel like it's always an evolution, right? Mm-hmm. It's always like I'm learning more, seeing how someone else is doing it. I've realized in the last few weeks that homeschooling is not what we are going to do. It's not how we are set up and how we are built. Mm-hmm. With that said, I think, there are certain things that happen at school that I'm not necessarily going to replicate at home. Right. I want my kids to really have a deep desire to learn, not just acquire information, but like really learn and tap into why they want to learn and think critically and get outside the box and be solution oriented. And then, once you have a foundation in that, how do you throw on some emotional EQ on top of it? So the way that we're exploring that right now, and we are by no means experts in this, but we're really trying to listen and hone in on their particular interests and give them an opportunity to experiment with them. So my oldest Naya, she's 8, she's turning 9 in August. She's like, I want to start a podcast. I was like, okay. So we're talking through that. And is this going to turn into some huge thing? I have no idea, but right now she really wants to explore what that looks like. So we talked about, who her audience is going to be, and we went and looked at all this different branding. We're like, we have to pick a look and it has to be consistent. So, went on to Upwork and then hired someone to do the artwork. And then I said, okay, great. Like, you can speak to my team who helps me with my podcast, and they're going to help you get those initial pieces set up. And how are we going to structure your interview? So she's like, whoa, there's so much that goes in to these initiatives. And she's having fun with it. So, it is the tool that is enabling me to have the conversations with her that my dad had with me when I was young. It's just Naya's version of it. And so the other 2 are younger. They're 6 and 4, but we're still doing the sort of age appropriate version of that. We're letting them really sort of direct what it is that they want to learn about. We've learned through this whole time that we're home that our middle daughter is like super into art. We had no idea because we all play sports. We're like, more sports. And she's like, I'd really rather just like draw lions all day long. She's good at it. We're like, okay. So there's just such a nice thing about slowing down right now and letting them sort of self-direct, but then supporting that self-direction is what we're really trying to do.
Totally. That's such a great way of doing it. And I know we're big proponents on that too. And Chris and I are funny because he's very structured and organized and planning. And I'm very like spontaneous and let's just jump in. And so this is a really unique dynamic. And then there's our kids who of course have elements of each one in each of them. So it's so funny. But at the same time, I totally agree with what you're saying about giving them that space and seeing what they are interested in learning. And I think you're right. Right now, there's such an opportunity because we're home to do things a bit differently, right? There's elements of school like the friends component that you really can't replicate, obviously, in this time. But there's so many other ways that you can bring out things that they don't really get. And it's actually interesting to see things that you realize that they are missing.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally. There are definitely stresses happening right now in families financial lives and businesses and all those things. At the same time, there's a part of me that feels guilty about it, but I'm like, I kind of want this just like lockdown to keep going. The same part of me that gets really excited when we have big snowstorms where no one can move. That's kind of how I feel right now. Like everyone is forced to slow down. I love not running to soccer practice 4 times a week, and then kung fu, and then whatever, like all the things that are going on in our family. And I know we'll look back at all of those things and be like, that was just so much fun. But right now, I'm actually really enjoying the stillness with them.
Yes, I'm loving it too. And I'm wondering, I mean, I know we're all kind of thinking like when this is quote unquote over, right? If there is such a thing, like what will it be like? And it is interesting for us to have this opportunity to have that almost juxtaposition juxtaposition that it's like, wow, your life was flying by you at miles a minute. And then now you're kind of looking at it from a whole different vantage point.
Totally.
Yeah. What a neat experience. So for you, with having the 3 kids at home, I know your husband he's there with you and you are doing all the things. How are you, Meg, personally fitting in, your workouts and your personal time? And I know you have your lifestyle habits that are, a big part of your life. So how's that all fitting in for you right now?
Yeah, I have this thing. I said to my husband this morning, I was like, I have this internal struggle where I'm like, I want to have the perfect morning routine and I want to always get up at the same time and I want to just execute on it. And then I woke up this morning, I was like, I don't want to work out this morning. Like I just don't want to. And so I'm struggling with these 2 pieces, but I do feel like I have this internal checklist that goes off in my mind every day. Like, have you had enough greens? Have you actually moved your body? Have you had a few moments of stillness? So to be honest, despite my desire for this to be a period of time where I'm like, oh, I nailed my routine. It's a little bit all over the place, but the checklist is still happening. So, I'm really endeavoring to work out every day. Way before, this situation came about, I invested in a Peloton for myself. Yeah. Because I wanted to work out at home. I was like, I don't want to get up at 5. I'm in Toronto. I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. in the middle of the winter and traipse through the snow and the cold and the dark to go to a spin class. Like I'm not interested in that.
Sucks.
And so I bought a Peloton. Loves it. Yeah. I love working out at home. I don't need to leave the house to work out. There's lots of reasons I want to leave the house. Working out is not one of them. So that has been really, that's been really great. And then just taking time every day to create some stillness. And I've started journaling again. Ooh. And I haven't done it for a really long time. Wow. But I actually love to write. So that's been kind of fun. And I was like, I also just want to be able to look back at this time and just understand my thoughts and my way of thinking. And so those things are happening on a daily basis. And then with respect to my health, we're really making sure that, collectively as a family, we're still engaged in. I might be having a little bit more wine than I would normally have, if I'm totally honest with everybody, because I'm a real human being. But, we're trying to make really great home cooked meals. We're not loading the house with chips and carbs. Right. We're really being vigilant about making sure that we are nourishing ourselves really well right now. Because I want to make sure that everyone's immune health is intact on the backside of this piece. Because it's one of those things, right? We go and we're stressed and we go on vacation and then we get on vacation and the first 4 days we spend it in our rooms because we're sick because our cortisol levels have completely re-regulated. And I was like, we're in go town right now. Everyone is a little bit more on edge. We're all a little bit more sympathetic. We actually have evolved to be able to handle these situations quite elegantly from a physiological perspective, but it means that our systems have shifted slightly to a more sympathetic dominant state. We have elevated levels of cortisol running through our systems. And the moment this is over, sure, we're going to be able to go back to restaurants and go back to our life. We're also going to have this immediate transition physiologically. And that's the moment and that's the transition I want to make sure that we're mindful of and protecting ourselves against.
I love that. That is so great. So exactly at that, let's call it that moment. Well, it's our bodies are readapting to a new way. Is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So think about it. If we're this nomadic tribe and we're hanging out, we've got our water source, we're doing our thing, we're reproducing and we've got our life. And then suddenly this group comes over the mountainside and we know we're going to be challenged for the space. We literally have this option where we're flighting, we're leaving, or we're going to fight. And so we have adapted as a species to be able to handle these intermittent periods of I'm going to call it unrelenting stress, where it's just one thing after another and your head's kind of down managing it. So that's already built into our operating system to be able to handle that situation. But on the back side of it, once we find our new place to settle, once we're like, okay, we're safe again, there is this adjustment period that happens with respect to our systems. And that's when it's safe to get sick. It's safe to come down, all of these different things. And we've all observed this in our own lives, right? But there are ways of being able to ensure that we mitigate that slightly. And that's really what we're focused on that a little bit as a family. We're not obsessed with it. We're just mindful of it.
Right. So what kind of things are you talking about mitigating it? Obviously eating healthy, boosting your immune system, all those kinds of things. What else?
Yeah, so we're sticking with our consistent supplement regime. We've upped our consumption of vitamin C. Not only is it really great for your immune system, it's actually really great for your adrenal glands. Your adrenal glands are what sit on top of your kidneys. They are the organ that actually modulate this whole stress response. They are like the commander of this operation. And so I'm really mindful with ourselves and with our kids that we have the nutrients, the nutrients in place to be able to adequately support those adrenal glands, so they're not like, oh my gosh, we're totally depleted and we're just going to crash. Supporting our microbiome, so we can certainly take probiotics. You can also eat fermented food. So we've actually really significantly increased our intake of fermented food. So whether that's sauerkraut, I'm on like my 8th attempt to make sourdough bread, because normally I buy it, but so far it's not going so well. We've all got our skill sets, but I'm trying. So, it's all of these different pieces, and like really being diligent around making sure that real food is part of what is in our daily supplemental protocol. And then the other thing that I'm really vigilant around monitoring for myself and for my husband, not necessarily my kids, is our heart rate variability. So this is not your actual heart rate. This is the change in amplitude that we see in your heart rate. Heart rate variability tends to drop when the system's under a considerable amount of stress. Okay. And so one of the things I really want to be able to watch is my numbers with respect to heart rate variability. Sometimes when I'm sleeping at night through my Oura Ring, I've got another really cool device called the Leaf, where I can monitor it during the day in like real time what's happening. But I'm really watching to make sure that trend is holding steady or on an upward trend, that I'm not trending downwards. Because trending downwards is usually like, it'd be like testing positive for COVID-19 a week before you're symptomatic, right? So when you see this downward trend of your heart rate variability, you're like, whoa, my system is significantly adapting to a heightened state of stress, and I need to be aware of that. So I'm watching those trends with myself and with my husband, partly because it's interesting, but partly because we can respond to it, and we can respond to it early.
Wow. I love that. I love that. And that you have these different metrics. And I mean, I really, really like what you said earlier, specifically around that routine where you were saying, I have this ideal of my morning routine, but then, life is what it is and it happens a different way, but you have this kind of checklist. I think that really, really stands out to me as something so valuable. And then you kind of refer back to it again with the food and the immunity. It's like you have this kind of mental checklist. And I think we all have this to a degree, and we don't necessarily notice it. But I think that's such an adapted way of doing it that positively allows you to have that flexibility in times of uncertainty, and also say, you know what, I ran through this little checklist and check. I did do all these things. So it gives you that boost.
Totally. Yeah. And I would do better with a routine right now.
You think?
That. Yeah. Those days where I've gotten up early and I've worked out and I've like executed in that way that I know work really well for me. Those, when I look back, like those are the days where I felt the best. Right. At the same time, I'm also just trying to let myself just feel how I'm feeling in the moment and not make this like this excessive type A execution thing.
Right.
So I'm feeling out. I'm feeling out something new, and that's okay too.
It is okay, and I think it is so okay for us to be okay with the things. And I've heard all this stuff right now. It's kind of like there's these two camps, which are like, right now, while you're all in lockdown, you should be the most productive and write 3 books and like be, the champion of chess or something. And at the same time, there's the other people who are saying, hey, this is a time to just chill and, relax and not get crazy. And I think there's definitely a happy medium. Where do you stand on this?
Hey, Fit Mama, I want to interrupt this episode just for a quick reminder to check out the Love Fit Mama Way. If you haven't already checked out the book online, it's available on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. It is a very comprehensive book for you where I explain how the transition into motherhood is a window of opportunity to transform the core of your being as a human and a leader. I go into detail about what you can do physically to rehabilitate your deep inner core after pregnancy and childbirth. It doesn't matter how many years postpartum. I emphasize that being a fit mama all starts with love.
and what goes into the embrace, nurture, and enjoy framework as I outline this journey for you. Because it's all about transforming from the inside out, focusing within, not without. Cultivating those healthy habits that stick, that are for you, is what this new generation of fit mamas like you really want. I lay out and I dive into the Fit Mama foundations along with all the relevant tools, new ideas, recommendations, scientific backup, and intriguing perspectives that will leave you feeling empowered Fit Mama and determined to connect deeper with your own core. Regardless if you're male or female, with or without kids of your own, you will find this book thought-provoking and practical in moving you toward true love and reverence towards your body and your life. I guarantee it, Fit Mama. Reach out. Please let me know how you like the book. It's only $4.69 on Kindle, and you have a Kindle app for free on your phone. If you don't, grab a Kindle. They're awesome. You can read it right on your computer though. And the paperback is only $24.95. I honestly know that it's worth it. It is over 10 years of research and pretty much 20 years of experience, plus my whole life. But it is a wealth of knowledge. And I know this makes a really, really great gift for any of those pregnant or new fit mamas out there. I guarantee you're going to feel a breath of fresh air from reading this book, and sharing it with your friends and family is giving love right to them. I talk all about healing your seal and doing the pearl pull-ups to bring yourself back into a place of equilibrium in your core, a nice connection, connecting with your deep inner core, how to rehab, what it all means, and it's super, super clear and simple. So check out the book, get it on Amazon. The link is in the show notes. And back to the episode. Have a great day, Fit Mama.
I just think it's so funny the way that we put ourselves in camps.
Always, right?
Right? We're like, oh, I'm this group or you're that group. Yeah. And there's no in between. Yeah. So there are days I'm hyper productive. We built an entire course in less than a week and released that to our audience. Like, we were on point. Yeah. And then the week after that, I was like, I don't think I accomplished a darn thing. So, there's this ebb and flow, and there's this beautiful gray zone that exists in life. And if you are mindful of the fact and intentional around the idea that you are in the gray zone, as opposed to I'm just absent to what's happening in my life. So it's like an intentional entry into that zone. Yes. It's kind of beautiful and awesome. And so, I was looking at my schedule for next week, and I was like, okay, you know what I'm going to do? Next week, I'm actually going to get up really early and be massively disciplined about it so that my husband can have the afternoons to work on his business and his company and his offerings to the world. So it's going to require that I'm slightly more vigilant than I have been right now. And so more than anything, just bring an intentionality to what it is that you are doing. Tap into your own system. Like, I think what this camp thing speaks to is this constant externalization of who we want to be. Yes. We keep looking outwards for like, oh, I like that group. I like their hair and their Instagram feed. I want to be like them. Like, what do you want to be like? And then find your tribe. Don't find your tribe and have them tell you who you are supposed to be. And I think if we tapped into that a little bit more, I would suspect that we are less polarized in our views and our needs to join different camps.
So true and so well said. And I think that this time of social media, which obviously didn't exist at this capacity, 20 years ago and before, it's really interesting how outside influences enter in and then influence how we behave, right? In a way that we never really were. Even just reading a meme is like, oh my God, I'm this different person because I believe this meme. And it's like, wow, we didn't even know about memes before. And now we buy into one thing or the other, right? It's such an interesting thing because we're in this reactive mode. Oh, what does this news article say? What is this? And we get these perspectives without really having that minute to sit back and say, what do I want?
Right. Or what do I think?
Yes. That's a huge one. Now, you mentioned your husband, and I kind of want to jump into this because my husband and I are in the same boat. As two entrepreneurs, and I know you and your husband both run your own businesses, there is that element of I'm doing my thing, you're doing your things. What do we do with these kids right now that are home? And are you in charge of them? Am I? Like, we do this balance in our general life when it's like, you got soccer, I'm flying here, we got this, and we kind of have an art and a science to it. And now it's like that gray zone you mentioned is the full-time thing. And how are you guys managing that?
How are we managing it? I will say for the first 4 weeks, I have selfishly handed the kids off to him, probably more than I should have. Shh, don't tell. But I think that's the truth. Like we pivoted really quickly. My company had a product and an offer that was so timely and so perfect and really could be of service in an expedited manner. And so we kind of have been all hands on deck on that. And what I'm seeing now and feeling now from him is this real need to ensure that I'm balancing that piece out. Like it's all well and good that this is an opportunity to go all in on your business. And I'm in this great mastermind group where half the people in it don't have kids. And so they're like, we work 18 hours a day. And I was like, okay, I should too. But what I'm realizing is that's going to come at a huge cost. And the thing I'm loving right now is the stillness. So I was like, part of what I have to create space for is like the stillness on all areas, not just the kids are running around a little bit less, but maybe I can run around a little bit less and create a little bit more space for him. So I will say for the first 4 weeks, it has definitely been inequitable, our allocation of kid time. But like anything else, everything can be reassessed on an ongoing basis. So the reassessment is that moving forward, we need to create a new system because we're going to have the kids around for a while. So we need to look at this a different way.
Yeah. And how has he been with it? How has the actual dynamic between you two? Like I know for us, it's not been necessarily as one-sided as that, but it's been like, okay, I got to get these few things done or, and us communicating has been really, really valuable, being like, okay, I need this next few hours. Can you, take the kids outside because I'm recording or this or that, that kind of balance. How's that been for you guys?
I actually think we've had decent balance around that piece. Like Greg's been really good about recognizing the opportunity that we had and creating space for that piece. I think though I'm just starting to feel that urgency is maybe the wrong word, but that desire, that inclination for him to just have more space to work on his things. And I think that's really important. And, both of us have had a chance to chat with Shamla Kiru in the last few weeks. She's this awesome relationship expert. And she's like, the most powerful relationships are when you each have your own thing. And kids aren't your thing. So, and I know I rock the boat sometimes when I say that. I talk a lot about this idea of purpose. And like kids are a vehicle and vertical through which your purpose can shine. But they in and of themselves are not the whole thing. And so those relationships that are the strongest, partner one has their thing and their avenue of contribution. Partner two has their avenue of contribution. And where things tend to get a little bit rocky is when there's not an opportunity for each partner to have that space. I'm recognizing the communication signals from my husband that he doesn't have enough space to explore his thing right now.
Right.
And so I think we'll reorient over the next few weeks.
Yeah, that, well said. And I think that's a really, really, really good thing that you brought up there, as in around the purpose, that kids are not your purpose. I'd love you to expand on that a little bit, because that is such an interesting concept. The idea that kids, what did you say there? Because I really like that.
I don't know. I can never repeat the same thing twice.
I know. It was something about kids are an avenue for you to express your purpose. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, I talk a lot about purpose. I talked about this in the context of my clinical practice. Like we, for 10 years, really looked at in our patient base, which patients identified as having a sense of purpose in their life and could articulate what that was, and who looked at me like I was crazy when I asked the question. And what we found was, and this is duplicated in the medical literature as well, because I started to observe it and I was like, come on, someone else must have observed this, and they have. What we find is that when people identify as having a sense of purpose in their life, not a passion, it's not scrapbooking, this is a purpose. This is like, this is the confluence of what you're really good at, how you can contribute in a manner outside yourself that's bigger than yourself. When people identify as having a sense of purpose, they live longer, they recover faster from cardiovascular conditions. They are less inclined to develop cardiovascular conditions. We see less incidence of neurological disorders. If they're diagnosed with a neurological disorder and they move into a state where they're starting to identify their purpose, they recover with greater expediency. We see less immune issues. Like, it's incredible what happens physiologically when we have a sense of purpose. And when I first started to do this, I was like, okay, great. Like, women have this huge advantage because, like, we're all in on our kids. We've got this built-in sense of purpose.
Right.
Culturally, except that wasn't what I observed. What we would see from our data and our practice is that, in fact, quite the opposite is that because we believed so strongly that kids were our purpose, we were starting to see these really distinct milestones in women's lives where things came crushing down. One of them in particular, what becomes really obvious, is when their kids leave home. And there's this intense state of depression that accompanies that. And at first I was like, oh, of course you're sad your kids left, like all of these things. But what I found, or you're lonely, or you need this, even when those, in this case, I'm talking about women, when women would, they'd have a strong friend group, or they'd go and play tennis, or they would they had their things going on.
Right.
When they had made their kids their source of purpose, and that purpose, through no fault of their own, this is just how life works, that purpose was removed from them. Right. It was devastating. And so what I then started to look at is, well, when was it working really well? And what is the circumstance? And I started to realize this new pattern, and this new pattern is that for a significant group of women in our practice, their kids, and they were really intentional around this, their kids ended up being a vehicle through which these women were able to live their purpose. So maybe they were a public speaker and they're like, I bring my kids with me when I'm doing public speaking events so they can see what that piece is all about. Or maybe they're like, I love baking, and I bake for people in senior citizens' homes. Like, purpose doesn't have to, it can be all sorts of things. I involve my kids in that process so that they can be part of that too. When the purpose is about serving in a bigger way, but not just like taking care of your kids,
right,
we see a totally different trajectory in terms of what happens on a physical level and on a mental, emotional level. And this is really hard for people to hear sometimes. I've had a lot of women in my practice who they just want to argue about it. They're like, I don't agree. And I was like, that's cool. You don't have to agree. I'm just commenting on what it is that we have observed. But I know more and more when I talk to women, and I've been in rooms with 200 women where we talk about purpose, and I say, your kids aren't your purpose. And I watch their faces and they just start to cry. And they're not crying because they're angry at me. They're crying because what I've done is given them permission to start to explore the thing that's truly in their soul. I've given them permission to continue to parent their kids. I've told them that they are still amazing parents, but it's okay for them to be able to explore their unique capacity for contribution independent of being a mother. And that permission to so many women is a game changer in their life and in their health.
Yeah, it sounds so liberating when you're saying it.
It is liberating. It's totally liberating because and so many of these women, I remember I was speaking in this room, there's 250 women, and it turned into this discussion. And this lady was sitting near the front. She's like, listen, I was told my whole life by my own mother, by my own father, by like my mother-in-law, like you do your thing when you're young, and then you get married, and you take care of your family. Like, you take care of your husband so he can go do his thing, so he can go do his thing. See what we've done? We take care of our kids so that they can go set up to do their thing. And I said to her, I'm like, do you want your daughters? Do you want your daughters to like lead corporations and do things? She's like, of course I want that. And I was like, okay, well, like, let's make them for you to have your purpose. And there was still just this like, like there was this real limiting belief around that piece. And when we fight for our limitations, we get to keep them. So the opportunity here is really, like, if nothing else, you don't have to go write your book right now. You don't have to do all of these things. I would love for this to be a period of time where women are able to check in on what it is that they want to contribute to this world outside the titles and hats and roles that they wear in society. I don't care if you're the CEO of a company. It doesn't mean it's your purpose, right? Your purpose can live through and shine through that hat, but we wear all of these different hats in our lives. Imagine if on the other side, you brought to each of those verticals and each of those roles a new sense of purpose. It could literally change your life.
Yes, it sounds so good. So how does one go about finding this purpose if they're feeling like they're not sure about it right now?
That's the $1 million question. Just go meditate. Come on. So like, that's not easy either. But the thing that it always seems to start with is you have to create space to do it. And you have to put yourself in a physiological state where you're open to it. And I have found that the two things that are sort of prerequisites to starting this exploration is one, creating the space for it to happen. You all have the space right now. I don't care how many kids you have. You have space right now to explore this. It might mean you go for a walk. You just need to create space. And normally when we're in our busy lives, we've actually created a whole training around this. How do you start to create space so that you can start to explore your purpose? And I'm happy to share that with your audience if that's helpful. So we have a whole system, we call it the Anthropology time system. And we use this time system to start to create space for the exploration of purpose. And the second prerequisite that needs to happen is you need permission to do it. And what permission does is it eliminates those, or at least forces us to call into question those limiting beliefs that have been applied upon us with respect to what our role is supposed to be. So I started off by saying you need to create space, and I'm giving you permission to start to explore this piece. I can give people those two things, and sometimes they are already leaning into what their purpose is like a week later. For other people, they're like, I meditated for a year and now it has become clear to me. And to be honest, like you don't have to meditate on this. You can, if that's a vehicle that has proven to be successful for you in the past to gain insight. But you might be on your Peloton rocking out to The Greatest Showman and you're like, I got it. It's totally clear now. You are responsible for putting yourself into a physiological state that maximizes your creativity. So pick your poison, as it were. Pick whatever one is going to help you find and access that state of maximum creativity. And then look for that feeling in your solar plexus, really. Like this is what I love to do. And when what you love to do overlaps with a capacity for contribution in like a Venn diagram kind of way, now we're onto something. And if you can monetize on it, even better. Now we've got a purpose that can actually turn into a business, but your purpose doesn't have to.
No, it doesn't have to, but that sounds really, really good. I love that feeling in the solar plexus that you just talked about. I'm like, because it's one of those things where we don't even realize sometimes until someone else gives us that permission that we can go explore.
Totally.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Wow. I love that, searching for that feeling in your body, because I think it's so common for us as women to have a knowing of something and then to ignore it based upon outside events or thoughts or people. Yeah.
Like, forget all the camps you can be in right now. Just be like, I'm in the camp of feeling what's happening in my body. And I acknowledge that and I deal with it in a moment by moment basis. Like, if you want to practice anything right now, just practice being in the present moment, right? And explore and unpack what that looks like. Yeah, sure, you're probably going to put your kids to bed on time and like a few other pieces of responsibility, but you're never going to have this time again right now to be this responsive to what you need in the moment. There's something selfish about that. What an incredible gift you're giving your family if you're able to then articulate to them that same process. So like, do it all together as a family for a week. Step in and be like, we're all going to feel what's happening with our bodies. We're all going to talk about it at the end of the day at the dinner table. Here's what I felt today, and here's the action I took as a result of it. Yes.
I love involving that. And I love having discussions about this because, again, when you're at school, it's unlikely the kids are having these discussions of those nature in their classrooms, right? Yeah. It's like touchy-feely, like getting in there, not necessarily happening. But again, tools for life. So I think that is it's just so valuable. And I just want to bring up, a little bit more detail around what you do with your entrepreneurs and your collective, your clinician collective that you do. I mean, Meg, I work with you in a mentoring capacity. I have loved what you've been doing for so long. As a naturopathic doctor, I know I've looked up to you as a mentor and a role model for, over 20 years, as I mentioned. And I really want to bring up right now exactly how you are helping clinicians right now in the work that you're doing, because it's unbelievable and it's unprecedented times how much impact that is actually happening around the world right now and what's available to us in a different way. So can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. For the last few years, in addition to our consumer-facing company, which is called Anthropology Labs, I supported a practitioner community in helping them elevate and scale their business. And practitioners in this case are allied practitioners, so naturopaths, chiropractors, functional medicine docs, whatnot. And this really started with just like 8 people who were like, can you just teach us the systems you have in your practice? And I was like, sure. And then we did it again and we did it again. And now we have like 4 or 5 different programs that people can participate in and memberships and all sorts of cool things. But what happened on March 15th was I got a call from, well, not a call, I got like 20 calls from practitioners, and they're like, everything's imploding. Like everything is falling apart. We're getting directives from our colleges. We can't see patients. We are like, everything's shifting. What the heck do I don't know what to do. And so for a really long time, I've been talking about the virtues of telemedicine. I've been talking about the virtues of having multiple streams of income. Like I've just been really playing around and toying with the need for a new model in that industry. And so really quickly, we created guides to help train practitioners to move them into a telemedicine practice. We gave all of that away for free. We've been running daily calls to that community. We're talking about everything from money and financial management right now to mindset to like really practical considerations when you make that transition into the online space. And, kind of back to the conversation we had at the beginning, I don't know how else to be in a crisis situation than to sort of step up and go, here's what I have to offer that I can share. I can't be on the front lines of the healthcare world, excuse me, to support in that way. But this was a set of tools that I could share immediately. This was the contribution that I could put on the table. So I did. And I really do feel that this particular population has such a tremendous capacity to change people's lives. And my immediate fear and ongoing fear is that there is a significant cohort of these practitioners who are simply not going to make it through this time. And I believe so deeply in the work that they do that I was like, you don't have to pick up our resources, but if you would like access to them, we were making them fully and transparently available so that these practitioners who do such amazing, incredible work were able to carry on and continue with what they were doing. And for me, this speaks to my purpose. And I've been really open as a naturopathic doctor for the last 10 years that I'm more committed to the expansion of naturopathic medicine. And I call it upstream medicine. So functional medicine, that whole genre of healing. I am more committed about making the system of medicine accessible to as many people as possible than I am to the model in which I practice it. And so there's been multiple turning points in my career and junctions where I've had an opportunity to stay in practice or grow my practice or try something else that would enable more people to reach these types of practitioners. And I've always kind of picked that route. So I'm on sabbatical from practice right now so that I can focus exclusively on supporting practitioners. And our goal is to connect 10 million people who would not otherwise have had access to these systems of medicine, to these practitioners by 2025. And so this action that I took in the last month was just totally in alignment with my purpose. That's why it was so easy for me to feel it and know what action I needed to take.
Yeah. And how, what a perfect situation set up for you that you could have taken one road and gone, oh shoot, all this is happening and I don't know what to do. Or you jumped into action that you could help people. And I think because you were already aligned with that purpose, there was no questions. And I mean, you are a woman of making things happen. And I see how your community loves and adores you and looks up to you, and you provide for them in a way that is so full of integrity. It's so full of giving and being of service that it just allows for people to, again, receive that permission to go and do that on their own.
Totally.
Yes.
Totally. And you hit the nail on the head. The power of purpose is that it takes away the big shiny objects, right? You're not like, oh, should I write a book? Should I do this? Like, what is it that I have to do? You're like, no, what is my mission? And is this action in alignment with my mission? It actually, frankly, makes life so much easier. It just takes time to be intentional around figuring out what it is. You gotta listen.
You're right. And it takes the effort and it takes the focus that it's not something that someone needs to tell you. There's no rules. And when you go seeking it from that perspective, it's like you come up short. But when you open up and expand yourself, just allowing it to pop in more, I feel like that's really valuable too.
Totally.
Yeah. Megan, oh my gosh, you provide so much value. Every time I talk to you, I know I learn and become a better person every single time. You are so full of wisdom and brilliance. And is there anything else that you want to talk with us today about?
Oh my gosh, you've just given me like open carte blanche to talk to, like, come on.
I trust you, girl.
No, you know what? I'll just share, like, I love hanging out with high vibe individuals who are like, I'm just on a mission to leave the world a little bit better. And sometimes we have total clarity on that, and sometimes we don't. But I mean, those are the conversations we have on my podcast. Those are the conversations we have within my online communities. And if that's something that resonates with you, and this is why you and I hang out so much, because we totally resonate on that level, then I would say let's just hang out more.
I love it. I will link up all the ways people can find you. I'll link to your podcast, which is amazing. I can't tell you, Megan, I don't know if I've told you this before, but how many times you've joined me on my hikes and how much you and I hang out in the mountains. I mean, I haven't even let you in on the secret. You've been hanging in the mountains every day with me.
Oh, well, I've been really enjoying the view. I'm totally honored because you have so many podcasts and different things that you can listen to, and you do send me little messages when you're listening to them, and it really is meaningful. I'll just say, like, as we've been doing this, I've had so many practitioners reach out and be like, I really appreciate this, and I just want to share, like, I actually really appreciate that feedback. I think sometimes it feels like people behind online businesses are just like big corporations they stuck a face on. But when people reach out to say, I really like this, or this made a difference, or this is how it's impacting me, it really is awesome.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you so much for sharing you and all of your brilliance and your energy here today. And thank you for all that you do for so many people, Megan. We're so grateful to have you.
Thanks, friend.
Thank you. Talk soon. Well, how awesome was that conversation with Megan? She is such an inspiration. I know she has a huge community that she is inspired by, and she inspires. It's second to none, the quality of work and content and podcasts and everything that she creates is of utmost quality and integrity, as you can see from talking to her. Thank you so much, Fit Mama. Thank you for being here with Dr. Megan and I. I look so forward to connecting with you again in the future, and definitely reach out to her if you are one of those high vibe entrepreneurs. Have a great day, Fit Mama. Namaste.